And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Terri Kay, who discovered she had a near-death experience during QHHT hypnosis. Terri, thanks for joining me and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. Good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Let's start with the day that you were having hypnosis done and tell us about the NDE.
This was a few years ago, just maybe a couple, and it was actually your show that enlightened me to the QHHT process, which is hypnosis and regression into past lives and tapping into higher self. And I was pretty sure, I'd always been pretty sure that I'd had a near-death experience back in I'm almost 60, but back in my 20s when Raymond Moody was making the daytime circuit with his new book. And well, books at that point, he had several. I'd never heard of near-death experiences. And so I went and got the book and started reading. And it's the after effects, all the little quirky, weird things that can happen to somebody once they have come back into the body with the the heightened sense of knowing all the clairs, the touching light bulbs that you blow them out. Of course, light bulbs are different these days than they were back then, but not being able to wear a watch because I shorted the battery out. And so just things like that. So, and then just, when you hear the stories, just the knowing that this is so familiar. So I knew when it would have been, and I would have been an infant. And so, of course, I probably wouldn't have had any memories. Some people do. I didn't. It was just the knowing. And really the biggest thing probably was trying to figure out my intuitive connections because they were strong, they were obvious. Um, and where did those come from? So I confirmed that with my mom, and she said, yeah, it's very possible. But it was during the QHHT where I actually like could see it. And I didn't want to tell people through my life. Yes, I've had a near death experience when I couldn't, like, if you can't remember what you saw, right? So that's not cool. And I'm about the truth. So so during the QHHT, um, I didn't go through a tunnel. I was just there. It just boom, immediately I was in the light. I didn't see anything visual as far as tangible physical objects or buildings or trees or anything. I was in a mist. It was I would call it a mist, not a fog. It was all light. And it was almost tangible. It was beautiful. I had 360-degree vision. There was nobody else to see, but I knew I wasn't alone, and it felt wonderful. So that was my near-death experience.
What happened to you that caused you to leave your body?
Oh, I was sick as a baby. I had pyloric stenosis, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. So I was basically starving to death. Um, yeah. So the pyloric valve in the stomach is shut. And back in the early 60s, that I don't know if it was for all doctors or all. I just know that apparently my doctor um, thought it happened to boys, and so he didn't think to look at for that. And so my mom said everything I ate came back up, and I did see pictures, and it wasn't very pretty. I was pretty emaciated. So yeah.
Did it have to get surgically repaired?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. What's really funny is I'd always been told that when they were in there, this is on the right side of the stomach, that they took my appendix out. So a couple of years ago, I was really, really sick, and the doctor misdiagnosed me with stomach flu. And finally, after, literally 11 days, and I couldn't hold any food down, they did a CT scan, and I had just left the hospital and called me back to tell me that I needed to come back because I was having appendicitis. And I had to argue, I don't have appendix. Yeah, that was taken out when I was a baby. So apparently, if they don't get every little bit, they can like grow back or whatever. So yeah, that was weird, but yeah.
So, do you feel like you grew up differently than most people because of your NDE?
I don't know how most people grew up. We only have our own perspective, so I don't
Hmm.
know. I would say, yeah, you eventually you kind of realize that you can, like, I'm also an empath, and so if somebody walks in and they're in a bad mood, I feel that, and I'm like, yeah, that's not a good thing right there. So you just, so yeah, maybe. I don't know that I was treated differently or anything like that. My mom eventually understood about it, and she would ask me things, but I just have my perspective, and you eventually realize that not everybody maybe is as tapped into those things as you are.
During your NDE, you were in a mist. Did you see your guides or
Nope,
angels or any beings?
nothing, no beings, none. But I could feel I was not alone, and it felt wonderful. I mean, I could see. I don't know how to explain it. Imagine if you're an orb and you can see everything. And I didn't look at myself, so I don't know what I look like. I just know I was there. I saw everything. Um, and it was a mist. It was beautiful. There were like tinges, twinkles of pastel lights. Um, wouldn't call it fractal because to me fractal is all connected, like not like a spider web, but kind of like a spider web. You know what I mean by fractal, right? Um, so I don't know. I would call it fractal, but I would call it sparks of just beautiful lights twinkling, all different colors of light, pastel colors throughout that mist, if that makes sense.
Are you saying that you were an orb?
I'm not saying I would, I'm not, because I didn't look at myself, so I can't really say that I was or I wasn't. But how in the world do you see 360 degrees at the whole, at the same time? You see everything. Um,
That's a
and,
good point.
yeah, so I don't know that I was an orb, but if you can see above and behind and below and on all the sides, I would say I was just consciousness.
Well, since your NDE, have you had any more out of body experiences?
Well, yes, I have. So what we haven't said is we did an interview a couple of years ago. Um, and since then, one night in particular, I was meditating, and I actually was planning to go to sleep. And I don't know what made me stop, but I stopped to meditate. I just thought, well, I'm going to meditate for a few minutes before I go to sleep. So I just kind of laid back and closed my eyes, and I felt like a vibration. And I know people say that there's a vibration. Believe me, I've tried to come out of my body myself. I'm not good at this. I can't do it myself, not intentionally. It happens when I'm sleeping, and sometimes it happens when I'm meditating. But me, Terry, saying, time to jump out, I just can't do it. But I'm meditating, and the next thing I know, I realize I'm not in my body and I'm shooting. Now, to me, this could be a tunnel experience, I guess, but it was dark, it was night. I was going up so fast that I can see, like, the first thing I realized is, like, wow, I'm not in my body and there's lights. It looks like lights coming past me, like shooting. And it's so fast that if I needed to put my eye on one single thing and have a focal point, I couldn't do it. Right. And it's we're talking seconds of this. Um, and so I'm going up and I'm realizing, okay, I'm out of my body. I don't know what's going on. And then I realize I'm slowing down. And as I'm rising up and yet slowing down, okay, I'm thinking it's dark. It is night. I don't know where I am. I'm thinking I must be in outer space because those must have been stars, right? So I don't know. I really don't know what that part was. But it starts in the brain to register, or the consciousness to register, like, okay, there's light here. Good. And then I realized, Jeff, that what I'm seeing, because at first I thought, it's amazing what you can think in just fractions of a second. Are these stars? They weren't stars at all. They were light beings. And when that registered, like, oh my, I mean, like a little kid on Christmas and your birthday and everything wonderful all rolled up in one. It was an amazing moment for me. And I, and then I thought, I probably shouldn't be here. I'm probably, not supposed to be here. I don't know how I got here. I don't know why I'm here. But they were just in the black, what maybe the black void or the dark void. I know I've heard you talk about this. I've experienced that place twice. But in this particular time, there were light beings. They were cloaked. They had like a head cloak on, um, long to the arms or to the wrist, all the way down. They emanated light, like you couldn't believe, so bright. And yet their garment also emanated light, but at a much um, reduced rate. Okay, not quite as bright, but no facial features to really speak of. And they were everywhere. There were lots of them. Just in were they floating in midair? I don't know. They were just in the dark, and I was in the dark with them. And I was just, and so then what happened was what I tend to do was get really excited, like, oh my God. And and then so I had an adrenaline dump in my body, and it jolted me back in. And then I was crushed because I was like, and I yelled at my guides, like, what was that? And they said I could hear them kind of giggling, and they said, look, you were going to go to sleep and you meditated. You were expected. And I know this, that we do this, and we, all of us, I don't care who you are or what you believe, we all have guides, teams that help us through our lives. And when we're not like psychoanalyzing every little thing in our with our human monkey brain, we're at peace and we're consciousness. And so um they said, you were expected here, and you were about to go to sleep, and you would have come up then on your own, and we brought you out. And I know I didn't do it. They said, we wanted to see what you would do conscious of this experience. And I was like, I totally blew it. I mean, I just like freaked out and got too excited. So they said, yeah, well, you'll be back up here. I don't even know if I slept that night. I was like, so like, oh my God, it was amazing. They were beautiful. They were so beautiful. And so I feel like I'm connected to that group. Um, a long time ago, I had a reading. I was in my early 30s back when, and I talked about this in my prior interview about them telling me I needed to do, you're going to do readings. And so I went to um, a lady where I lived at the time, and that I won't get into that whole story because it's kind of long and drawn out. But my deal was, okay, if that's what I'm supposed to do, you're going to have to like put that right in my face, because I'm just not going to assume that I'm going to go do that, and I don't want to like think that I don't want to misunderstand and assume that's what I'm supposed to go do, right? So yes, that all happened, and I went, and she did say that to me. But at that time in that reading, she told me that my guide, or my what she called an angel, which is really to me the Hebrew word for angel just means messenger. It doesn't mean what religion gives us. It just means messenger. But I know it's a celestial being. Now, she told me his name, and she called that being Alma. Now, I guess about 6 months ago, I heard a podcast, a lady talking about a collective called Alma. And I did reach out to her, and she didn't really give me much feedback on that. So I don't know if that's one and the same. And she did say they were light beings. So that really, I was like, wow. So I really wanted to hear what she had to say, but she didn't really say much. So I don't know if it's the one and the same or not. So yeah, that was my dark void. Uh, one of them,
Well,
one of the two.
Terry and I are friends on Facebook. And for any of you out there that would like to friend me, you're welcome to do so. You have to find me under Jeff Reynolds. Mara is my beloved wife, and so you won't find me under JeffMara. You'll find me under Jeff Reynolds. Anyways, many times when a missing child comes across my feed, I just repost it. And so not too long ago, Terri contacted me about it because she may have identified or ran across one of the perpetrators of this. And so I said, so we decided, why don't we have you come back and talk about it as well as your NDE?
Yes, you had that. I woke up that morning and I have seen you do. You're very good at posting those. They're important because you never know. And that particular morning, I looked at your Facebook page. It came across my news feed and something said stop. So I stopped. You've got to listen to that inner voice. It's so important. Every single one of us, if you want to call it gut feeling, if you want to call it psychic, if you want to call it intuitive, it doesn't really matter. It's just, that's all labels, but we're all connected. So I saw the post and I knew to stop. And as I was looking at it, um, the, that inner voice, they said, there's no adult pictures. Go look it up. So I went to, the browser and it showed the name of the people. So it wasn't hard to find them. Um, and I heard screenshot the pictures. So I did. I screenshot, and I've never done that before. I've shared them before, but I've never screenshotted them before, right? So I go on about my day. I take my grandson. We go down to the library. His dad calls. I hand him my phone. I love the library, so I'm not. I'm just happy to be in the library, and I didn't think anything about it. We get in my car. We went to the store. I walked in, got my cart. We're walking along, and there's a lady standing in the aisle in my way with her basket, and I I can't get around her. So I stopped and looked at her, and on she was on this side on my left, and there was a guy on the right, and the cart was right in front of me, and he turned and put his hand on the cart and looked straight at me and said, "Oh, hi, sorry," and moved the basket. Bam. I just was like, "Oh my God." And so I'm digging in my purse as I'm pushing the cart and hanging onto my grandson and moving away from them. And my phone is not in my purse. And I immediately realize it's at the library. And of course, that's panic right there. Like I'm already adrenaline dumped from the guy. And I'm right. And that morning, as I looked at the picture of him, particularly a picture, because he's a registered offender, and and I mean, sometimes people take their kids because they're estranged and they're divorced and it's ugly and dirty. This is not the case. This was really a bad one. And but I remember looking at him, Jeff, and I'm thinking, he's got the kindest eyes. How is that possible that he's this thing? But he's got these like and I'm thinking to myself, man, if I was like face to face with this dude, this wouldn't I might not think this about him. And there I was face to face with this guy. And I'm just like, my heart's pounding and I can't find my phone. And so I'm running out the door, I get to the library, call the cops. I call and I hurry back to the store as fast as I could. And by this time I've got their license plates. So and the make of the car. So I'm driving the parking lot and it's not there. So I walked in. The lady at the cash register, it's a small store, so it's not like a big Walmart. And she knew I was running because she was trying to help me as I'm leaving the store. And I'm like, I gotta go, my phone, my phone. And so um she said, did you find your phone? And I'm like, yes, I found it, but look, are they still here? I show her the picture and she looks at it and she goes, oh, no, no, no. I know they just left. So she recognized him from my picture. And I said, what were they driving? And she said they were in a Mustang. So I leave and I called the detective that was on the posting, right? And I spoke to him and he had lots and lots of questions. And he called me back several times. They checked the footage because I spoke to the manager at the store. They checked all the footage on the inside, the parking lot. The police came, they checked the footage. Um, and so eventually they did get the child back. but they got the child back. Apparently, they were being hid by people they knew in Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. And I live in Oklahoma. Um, they caught her coming back across the border from Mexico um, with her child. And so they incarcerated her and they got the child back to the custodial parent. He is still at large. So I actually talked to the detective again recently and just to follow up because I would love to know that that guy's off the street. Um, Intuitively, my guess is he's in Mexico still. That's my gut. Um, but he did tell me, he said, we got over 100 tips on that case. And he said, of all of them, he said, yours is the only one that came close. That's as close as we came to actually getting him. We do think that was him. Um, unless they caught him, they couldn't be 100% sure. But the checker sure did. She goes, oh, yeah, they just left. So she knew exactly who I was talking about. And it clicked in her head, too. So um, I think what you do is great with those posts. I wish everybody would do that. Never in a million years did, especially on the same day. But I listened to that inner voice. I listened to my guide say, "Go look it up." They chide me, "Go look it up," and I was like, "Okay, go look it up." Um, Snapshot it. So I did. You just know that's what you're supposed to do, and I had it. Now, if we hadn't left the phone in the library, I don't know. Maybe they would have got him then. I don't know. My gut says that the lady that he was with is not the woman in the picture, but a friend. I just intuitively just kind of know that's the connection there. So, yeah. So we were talking about this and we talked about me coming on and talking about that. So, anyway, there you have it.
Well, how do you contact your guides?
How do I not contact them? I don't know how to. I don't know how to flip that off. I mean, they're just there, right? They're just when I just talk to them, like, "Hey, what do y'all think about whatever? And what does this mean?" And and sometimes they let me know stuff. Like you just know it, Jeff. I have all the clairs except for the one that's associated with taste. I don't think I've ever experienced that. I've smelled, I've heard. My mom comes in, all my family's gone. My brother comes in. Um, so my dad, I think my son won't like this, but I think my dad's right here in an 8-year-old body that I call my grandson. And I suspected as much, but I never would have said it to him. But when he was 3, he came bouncing through the living room one day and stopped and looked straight at me. And he said, "You're my daughter." And I said, "No, I'm Mia." He calls me Mia. I said, Like your grandmother. I'm your grandmother and you're my grandson." And he looked at me like I was out of my mind. And he said, "No, you're my daughter and I'm your father." And my dad had real quirky, weird things about him, right? Not like he wasn't a weird person, but you know how we all have our little weird quirks, right? That are very unique to us. Well, my grandson has some daddy quirks that are just really specific to my father. So, yeah, so daddy didn't come in, but and my grandson is so enlightened. He's so aware of all this stuff. I think a lot of children are these days, and I think that's great.
So do you hear your guides or do you get like information in the form of a download?
All of it. I have like the cognizant is just the knowing, the audio is and it's really not out here, it's in here. You have to learn it's a frequency, you have to tune in. You have your own inner mind chatter that's like blah, 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 and it's ridiculous. And then they don't talk like that. They are just like very precise. They're just like bam. And yeah, they'll just say things. Um like they like after I got back from being pulled out, they just said, I was like, "What happened?" And they're like, "Well, you were going to go to sleep and we wanted to see how you would handle this when you came out of your body." And I was like, "Yeah," and I blew it. And they said, "Yeah, but you'll be back." And they giggled. They giggled. I was like, "That's not funny." They're kind of snarky with me, and they have a nickname for me that I don't appreciate, but they think it's comical, and they call me Brad. And that's because I'm a pain in the butt, and I question everything. They'll tell me something, and I'm like, "Okay, great." Now, I want some confirmation. I want validation. I want you to show me that in every possible way externally before I need to. I'm just that way. I need proof. I'm very skeptical. I'm very inquisitive. I don't trust. I mean, we live in a very interesting world. And when you've been here as long as I have, and you have almost, I mean, you're not that much younger than me, I don't think, right? You're what, 50s?
Yep. Oh,
50s, yeah. 63 almost. So, um, you look at things and things aren't all what they seem, right? So I have a lot of questions and I've had a lot of questions through life. One of which is like, okay, if we I mean, like when I was in my 30s, I couldn't get enough near death experience because it was familiar to me and I connected with it. And so I read everything I could. And nowadays, thanks to you and people like you, there's tons of information and books and people sharing what they've been through. And so, if you're looking at that, a near death experience, and what I was doing after my mom died, I asked the creator, like, okay, I've never given, your book a chance. Because I'm thinking, how can they both be true? They're not, they're not meshing. So which one is it? Right. So I did about 7 years of really hardcore studying scripture from a Christian perspective. And the first, I remember because I got a clairvoyant visual thing from the creator on that one, and I'll never forget it. It was wonderful. And because I was like, okay, well, what church am I going to join? None. And I was like, okay, so I'm alone on this? Well, no, because I'm with you. But I got this like visual, like a little movie playing out. And there's a guy sitting in the pew of a church, watching the guy at the pulpit. And look, I'm not here to knock anybody's religion. I'm not going to do that. I'm talking about my journey and what I was taught. So he's listening to the guy at the pulpit, and the next thing you know, he's dead, and he's at the proverbial pearly gates and ready to come in, and they say no entrance. And he's like, but why? What did I do? I did everything my pastor said. And they said, that was the problem. That was your mistake. You handed over your journey to somebody else. And it wasn't about heaven or hell. That wasn't the message. I understood the message. The message was, this is this is your journey. Don't put it in anybody else's hands. Be responsible for your own journey. Learn everything you can. Don't look to somebody else to tell you what is what. Seek it out. Seek out truth. And man, from that moment on, that's I've always kind of been about the truth, about seeking truth and wanting to understand things. Um, but that was really pivotal for me. So between seeking truth in scripture and finding holes, and then spending another 5 years looking at it from a Hebrew perspective, not a Jewish perspective, but a, a Yeshua, not Jesus, but Yeshua, was a Hebrew man, right? And he kept the Hebrew feast. So what did that look like for him? So I wanted to know about that, and eventually that took me into the mystery schools, um, and then it took me completely back out and back into my spirituality, which is where I really started as a young adult, is feeling very spiritual. And yet, um, I don't think we throw all of that out. I mean, I love Yeshua. Um, if I have a guru, he's my guru. I mean, he's my guy, right? But I'm not religious, and I don't. So I personally don't. I think that the scripture's been messed with a bit. Um, and I'm not okay with that for me. So I think that Yeshua was an Essene. I love the Gnostic texts, and I'm learning about those. And and it's finally all coming together. I think, as somebody that's spiritual on a journey and seeking, there's a lot of people out there with a lot of different thoughts. And we all have little nuggets of truth. But at some point, you have to discern, and I really trust my creator and my guides for that discernment, for them to say, mm-mm, just skip that one. And for them to say, yep, that's what you want to look at. Now, now dig and learn. And but at some point it all has to come together and fit, right? You can't have big chunks of missing puzzle pieces, or at least I can't. It has to make sense to me, and it has to be validated. There has to be I need as much proof as I can get. I mean, some things you can't prove. You can't prove everything, but yeah, so that's really my biggest passion. Um, and I have two groups. One of them, and this was like a request from my guides, like, we want you to create a group, and I was like, for what? There's plenty of groups, and they said, well, we want this, and that, right? So, and they one of the things they wanted was teaching mediumship and teaching people how to connect to their guides, and I said, I don't want to do that because I mean, you guys flipped a switch or whatever you did to me when I came over there. I don't know how to teach that. I mean, I know how to learn to navigate it, but um, so they brought me somebody. They said, we know everybody. We'll bring those people. They brought somebody to do everything that they had requested, and those people are awesome. So I have Teresa Collins teaches. She did a whole series on mediumship and connecting with your guides. Somebody that taught how to use your energy in Reiki. Somebody that taught how to do into what does she call it? It's intentional meditation. We've got people that are talking about how to heal holistically and to live holistically. So yeah, it's come together really nice. But then I have another one where we do deep dive and we put these crazy pieces together of what's going on this planet. What does it really mean for ascension? What is ascension? Is there going to be a flash of light? I personally have been told no. That takes away free will. If there's a big flashlight and we all just go, we're all, you know. So they said, no, Terry, where's your free will in that? And I was like, oh yeah. I mean, it sure would be nice. I would like it, but that's not, that means I have to be responsible still for my journey. And so I am. But yeah, so those are my passions.
Have you seen UFOs or had contact with an ET?
I have had contact, if you want to call it contact. It was another meditation, and I mean, I was startled. I wasn't ready for it. I was minding my own business, meditating away, and all of a sudden, I had a very clear visual image of what I'm very sure was a female. Um, she was green, and that we hear about the reptilian and the draconians, and I had heard about those, but I knew very little about extraterrestrials at that point. As far as that wasn't my passion, I wasn't diving into it. Um i i was a little curious about the five, I think it's C5C or C5 or whatever, that people are doing that contact and sitting out and, like, telepathically communicate. And I believe that. I believe I've done it with my dog. I mean, I call her, wrap my energy around her, and call her in my mind telepathically, and she's over there, doing that thing, that horrible sound that they do. I can't stand that. She's in her own zone, right? Minding her own business. And when I call her name, boom, man, that head comes up and she looks right at me like, yes. And I was like, wow, that's just so cool. So yes, we're all connected. We're connected with the animals, connected with the insects and everything. So it's just a matter of stopping to be connected. But yes, she popped in, and all of a sudden she's like I'm looking right at this, like, but she's green, and that freaked me out. I'm not gonna lie. It unsettled me, and I'm a little embarrassed about that part because I bolted straight up and went, "What the hell?" I was like, "What was that?" And they're like, "Okay, calm down." And I was like, "What do I do?" And they said, "Why don't you just go, like, look up extraterrestrial? Just do an image search." And I was like, "Seriously? So how am I going to Google that?" So I did, extraterrestrial species, and I just started going through, and oh, I couldn't believe it. I found her, but she's blue in the picture. She's not green. And I said, "But she was green. Why is she green?" And they said, "Okay, is everybody on your planet white?" And of course, I'm shamed. I'm like, "No, of course not." That would be ridiculous. We're all different colors. We're all, shades of colors. And they said, okay, thank you. And I was like, okay, yeah, okay, okay. So I didn't know she was Arcturian, and I didn't know that there could be green Arcturians. But I'll tell you that since then, I've read comments, and like, I don't go telling people, like, look at me now, I'm on your show talking to God knows who, telling them, yes, I've seen an Arcturian female. And all she did was smile at me. And I asked the guys, I was like, what did she want? Why did I see that? And they said, I said, who was she? They said, she's you. And I said, what do you mean she's me? And they said, she's just a version of your higher self having a life. And I said, well, what does she want with me? And they said, Terri, the entire universe is watching your planet right now. You guys are going through a massive shift, as you know. Yes, I know. And everybody's watching. So she was just like popping in, wanting to see what you were like. And I was like, well, that was embarrassing. And I made a really good show because I popped up and yelled. But yeah, I just wasn't expecting it. It was startling. And I did another QHHT with Christy Sharp, who did my first one. And I was given her name. And I'm going to tell you what was really freaky about this. It's a name I'd never heard before, ever. Sharta. And so I thought the guides one day said, why don't you go look up that name? And I was like, okay. So I looked it up, and the only origin I could find on it was Egypt. Okay. So a little while later, this is how they work with me. They bring me I want all this proof and all these confirmations and validations. So Edward Robert Grant, am I saying his name right? Do you know who I'm talking about?
I know of him. I don't think I've had him as a guest. I think it's Robert Edward Grant, but I could
Thank
be
you.
wrong.
Right. Robert Edward Grant. The guy is really, really smart, scary smart, right? And so he goes and spends time in the pyramids, and they were down there, and it was apparently prophesied that there was going to be something found, like very paleo. Okay, I don't think paleo Hebrew per se, but and so they're down there, and of course you can see very visually there's all kinds of stuff there, and it's very visual. But all of a sudden he started to notice that there was more there. And I guess, I don't know if they were taking pictures. He showed pictures of this, and he showed where you could see it. And it turns out that it's also, it's like a perfect overprint of the Last Supper, Da Vinci's Last Supper painting. Was a perfect fit. And so he was asked, and this is what I thought, like, what is this writing? Who did this? Where did this come from? And he said that it was Arcturian. And I just went, oh, wow. Okay, so that name is ancient Egypt. It's only associated as Egyptian. Excuse me. And there we are talking about pyramids, and she's getting, the guides have given me or the higher self has given me this name of her name being that. It was just freaky, like how it all just kind of meshed together. So, and they just found, I love this, like, Egypt stuff, this pyramid stuff, because like, you've had Paul Wallace on, and he totally is, for me, his all my studies of scripture, yes, that's it right there. These were I truly believe, Enlil, Enki, Anunnaki, Anu, the whole thing. I think that's what we're really looking at, in Genesis and beyond. Even like in Psalms, there's even one about, are we not gods? And yeah, so I just totally love Paul Wallace. In fact, I've written to him, and he's written back. I wanted to know, like, where does it say that God needed virgins? Because I used to do tour portions every week, and how did I miss that? And he showed me, and it's right there. And I was like, wow. I mean, I guess I kind of just assumed that the virgins were going to the Kohen, to the priest, right? Not to, like, what does God need virgins for? Doesn't make any sense. But he also needs gold and a whole lot of cattle, according to the Old Testament. So yeah, we're just looking at something altogether different. It just doesn't make sense. And for me, Paul Paul hit it. Paul hit the nail right on the head. The scripture had never made sense before until and the guides had talked to me about some of this, like in the garden, um, the serpent. And what was that? Was that really the quote devil, or Satan? It never says it was Satan. In fact, Satan's not really even a word. It comes from the term Hasatan, which is Hebrew, and it just means adversary. So where we get Satan, it's just ridiculous. There's so many things that have been twisted up and mistranslated and miscommunicated, and I believe there's a lot of agendas behind that, and it's sad, but if you dig, you can find the truth. And so, but if you look at that word, for the word serpent, it does mean serpent, but it also, Nahish, I believe is the word, if I remember correctly. I did a big deep dive for my group with this, and it means also shining one. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So anyway, Robert Grant, Paul Wallace these are all people that we're just getting huge chunks of great information. But at some point, we all have to step back and we have to mesh this stuff together and look at a bigger picture of what does this mean? Why are we here? What is our purpose? What are we supposed to do? I personally am in line with a demiurge, that comes out of the Gnostic shadow work of cleaning up your stuff. I know some people, when they talk about soul traps, it freaks some people out. It gets a little scary to them. But, you know, I mean, Yeshua talked about reincarnation. That, who do they say that I am? And they quoted off that he was a bunch of dead guys. Well, he didn't admonish them for it. So clearly that must have meant, and he said, when is Elijah coming? Well, he's here, and you didn't even recognize him as John the Baptist, right? So he's talking openly about reincarnation. And in the Gnostic text, it's very clear he's talking about how to navigate this world, to let go of the things of this world. And when you do leave this world, because ascension happens here, it doesn't happen after the fact, it has to happen here. I personally am not walking on water yet. I'm still working on it. But when you get to a certain level of understanding and you let go of the lies, and you have to see the lies to let them go and realize, because they're all like kind of snares. You get caught up, like, let's have a political debate. Let's not. Let's not go there. Let's not get caught up in that, because that's just another tool of division. And so when you start to see all this stuff, and you put all these great nuggets of truth that people are getting, put them together and realize, yeah, I'm done. And I hope to not come back here. It was fun. I don't think it's going to last forever. I don't think it was ever really meant to happen, but I have a creator that's up there, and I'd like to go there and stay there and not come back to this. I mean, this is hard. I've suffered. I'm sure, we've all suffered. Um, this is not meant for our eternal spirit. Maybe our soul, because soul and spirit are different things, but our soul is not of this realm. And I've never felt at home here. I've never felt like I truly belonged here. I think a lot of people feel that. And I think that you can, seek truth, ask for truth. That's what I've always asked for, and they've given it to me. Maybe it takes a lot of time for me to comprehend it and dig through it and sort it out. But yeah.
Well, since you're into the Gnostic text, do you believe in the archons and that we're just
Yes.
feeding them through fear?
Well, stop being demon food. Remember on my first interview, and you titled my interview that, and I went, "Oh my God, of all the things, stop being demon food." But I thought it was hilarious at the same time, because when the guide said, because I was angry at the things I was learning about our planet and things that were being done here. And the more I learned, the madder I got. And it occurred to me, like, okay, at some point I'm gonna have to step away from my anger and get a grip. And so I talked to him. I was like, look, guys, I know I'm mad. I know I'm not in a good place. I don't know how to get out of this. I'm so angry about some of this stuff. And that's what they said to me, stop being demon food. And I was like, excuse me? What do you mean demon? I was insulted. I was really, really offended. How am I demon food? I asked, like, and they said, okay, when you wallow, which I was doing, I was just in it so deep, like so angry and upset. When you stay in that negative vibration with your thinking, because you're manifesting all the time, every thought is a manifestation. And when you're thinking those thoughts, you literally become a buffet for that low vibrating energy. They feed off of it. The whole world is set up to create chaos. Our news, and they told me, quit watching the news, turn it off. And I said, okay, well, they said, just shut the cable off. I was like, well, I won't watch the news. They said, but you're paying for it. You're paying, they're getting money from you. You know, the stations get paid. If you've got cable, they're getting a percentage of that. Turn it off. I was like, okay. So I didn't watch news for years. And recently, just like maybe a year or so ago, they said, turn it on, watch the news. And I went, what? And they said, look, if you don't watch it to see if you're triggered, then how do you know that you can handle it? You needed that at the time. Now it's time to test it out and see if you are going to be triggered, or if you are, or if you can watch it without getting caught up in it, because it again is a trap. So we've got this whole world that is like negative, 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 and just coming at us all the time, right? And so we have to learn to navigate that without emotionally becoming attached to those things, right? We have to just say, yeah, that happened. It's not good, but do I want to be angry? So yes, I believe in, I mean, that's the thing, is like, okay, we go to heaven and everything is great and it's all butterflies and wonderful. Yeah. And yes, that is true. That is, I'm not saying that that isn't true, but even scripture talks about that there are different levels of that, of the other side. And I always understood that the more you learn and the more you let go of your flesh, of this animal nature, because this, our creator that created this, the soul or the spirit really, is not the creator that created the body. And when you read how the body was created and who did it and how that being came into existence, and that every single part of your body has an angel that that thing created, it just all makes so much sense to me. If it's all so wonderful, and the creator is so benevolent, why would the creator let us, why would he create this thing with the suffering and the things that we know and the control system that's in place that controls our entire world? Why? I don't think that he did. I don't think that's his design. So when you read the Gnostic text, it becomes very clear. And, you know, some of that Gnostic text comes straight from Yeshua. So it really gets clear. And then it really validated my belief that he came to free us from that system, that control system, because it's infiltrated everything. So, yeah, I do believe in that. But I don't see it as scary because, like, look, if we're all here right now, so it means unless this is your first trip to planet Earth, you've probably already reincarnated a few times. So it's not scary. That's not scary. That's nothing to freak about. I mean, everything's perception, and I don't see it as scary. Do I want to keep doing it? Not really. I like to move on to other places and try other things. I've had enough of this. I'm happy to be here for now. You know, I really am. I'm glad to be here, but yeah, this, when this one is over, um, I'm okay not to come back.
Well, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open
Sure.
to that?
Absolutely. We have the group. People are welcome. The easiest way probably to find me and the group is Facebook, and it's Terri, and then the last word is Kay. And I know that there's other Terri Kays on Facebook, so that makes it kind of hard, right? So just look for, I have a dragonfly as my profile picture. So you can look for that. And yeah, I'm happy to answer whatever questions. And if they would like to um, join the groups and utilize some of the, we don't charge for anything. Nothing's cost anything. I don't want anybody's money. Nobody's allowed to come in the group if they want to practice doing readings for other people. We never charge. It's not about money. So everything is free, and I don't care if you like my video or subscribe. I don't care. I don't want a following, but I'm glad you have one, Jeff. And I know that I know every time everybody in my group loves you,
Mm.
loves Jeff Reynolds, and knows. I think most of them know that Mara is your wife, and
Mhm.
your last name isn't Mara. So, but they adore you. And I think that you have been like a huge bridge, because you're not just talking about near death experiences or extraterrestrial contact. And this is really kind of what my guides wanted in my group too. In the group that they asked me to do was, all the different things. And you do that. You incorporate everything. And I think it all matters, because I mean, what part do you leave out, right? And you don't. So I love that. And on behalf of your audience and myself, thank you for what you do, because you certainly opened QHHT for me, and that was very life changing for me. It really was. So thank you.
Well, thank you for watching.
Thanks for having me back.
Well, before we finish up, can you leave us with a last positive message?
Yes, thank you. And I hadn't really thought about this. I knew we were going to do this yesterday, but I hadn't thought about it until right now. But there is a lot of disinformation out there. Okay. And that's on purpose. That's okay. Let them do their thing. The truth is out there for every single person that wants truth and wants connection and wants to understand. And it's here. Yeshua said the kingdom of heaven is within. We, all of us, have a divine spark that the creator put within. And I know that there's a lot of talk about non-player characters and people that are soulless people and all that. All you have to do is call out to the creator of the divine spark of the spirit and ask to be awakened. And you are never alone, and you never have to walk this path or this, your journey. They will do everything you ask. They really will. They're so loving. We have so much help if we only just remember to ask, but we do have free will, and we can choose not to ask. And that's crazy, but we do. I still even do. And they will say, yeah, well, you didn't ask for help. And I'm like, yeah, because I had to be just idiocy, but you just get human. And so, yes, you have help. Ask the creator, and you will get what you need.
Terri, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest again.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.